My dear students, welcome back to English class. This class is about supplementary reading section. You must have seen the supplementary reading section in which there are 4 lessons. Today I am going to take up the first lesson, which is titled Narayanpur Incident. Narayanpur is a place in Chhattisgarh, and the incident is referred to an event that took place in Narayanpur during the days of Quit India movement. You know, Quit India movement of 1942 played an important role in fighting against the British. Gandhiji, as you know, launched many movements against the British. Non-cooperation movement, civil disobedience movement, salt satyagraha, and the famous Quit India movement of 1942. In fact, in the year 1942, Gandhiji gave an ultimatum to the British. Ultimatum refers to final warning to the British to quit India, to leave India. And all the followers of Gandhiji all over India held this movement, supported this movement in so many ways. Seeing this, British were in tension. Their tension was, if this Quit India movement becomes a successful one, then their survival in India is doubtful. The entire faith and confidence of British government was shaken by this movement. British government, without wasting time, it arrested almost all the main leaders who were behind this movement. Why they arrested, imprisoned all the leaders behind this movement? In order to make this movement an unsuccessful one, in order to weaken it, in order to pull all the strength of this movement. That is why many of the leaders, including Gandhiji, were imprisoned during this. Today's lesson is all about the incident that took place in a place called Narayanpur during the times of Quit India. This lesson also tells us about the spirit of patriotism of those people who struggled against the British. And also, it is interesting to note that Indian people who were working under the British were cooperating with the freedom fighters. Actually, many Indians were working under the British as officers and in different positions. The interesting thing is that within themselves, they were loving India, though they were working for the British. They supported our patriots at many situations. So you will find one such example here. Let me go through the paragraphs. Take your textbook and open it at page number 181. Narayanpur incident brought to us by Shashi Deshpande. As you can see, this is the story of a patriot whose name is not mentioned. He was a lecturer, he was a teacher basically. He was arrested, he was put behind the bar for propagating Gandhiji's speeches. In those days, even copying Gandhiji's speeches, making photocopies of Gandhiji's speeches was not allowed. I think the person did it and he was arrested. See, the arrested patriot, he was imprisoned. He had 3 children. One is Mohan, 18 years old, Babu, 13, and daughter Manju, 11. So keep this in mind. So patriot was behind the bars or in prison. See the introductory paragraph. The year 1942, the time of the Quit India movement, a teacher in a small town, a follower of Gandhiji, has been arrested. His elder son, 18-year-old Mohan, and his college friends, including Suman, believed in a different form of resistance to the British, opposition to the British. His younger son, Babu, aged 13, and daughter Manju, 2 years younger, that means 11 years, are also keen to participate, interested to participate in the struggle against the British. This tells us that people from all walks of life, lawyers, teachers, businessmen, everybody involved themselves in the freedom struggle because they greatly admired, greatly followed the principles of Mahatma Gandhi. So one such situation is we are going to study. So the story begins. "Are you coming, Manju?" Babu asked. "Coming where? Coming where?" said Manju. Even as the brother and sister were walking, they heard magical words. "They are coming! They are coming!" The children, like others, rushed out, heedless of the rain. Policemen now appeared all along the road. Some of them walked in front of the students, some by their sides, but the students marched as if the police didn't exist. So, when the story begins, "Are you coming, Manju?" Babu asked. It's a conversation between Babu and Manju. "Are you coming out? Coming where?" Even as the brother and sister were talking, they heard some words, they heard some shouting. That is that, "They are coming, they are coming." People in their neighborhood started, saying loudly, "They are coming, they are coming." Who are coming? The children, like others, rushed out of the house, heedless of the rain, without paying any attention to the rain, without bothering about the rain. It was drizzling. Drizzling refers to light rain. It was raining. Heedless of the rain, they went out of the house to see something. What was that? Policemen now appeared all along the road. The policemen appeared from their station and they stood along both the sides of the road. Some of them walked in front of the students. Some of them walked in front of the students. Students refers to those students who were participating in this procession. Students of that village held a procession against the British in favor of the freedom. Some by their sides, but the students marched. The students' procession was marching as if the police did not exist. They did not pay much attention to the presence of the police, and they marched on and on and on. They walked in complete silence. Usually, procession is full of noise. Band check, music, crackers sometimes, slogans, people shout, stone, they pelt the stone, they throw stones, they damage a lot of property. But this procession was an unusual one. It was a different type of procession where the entire group of students walked in silence. There were no slogans. See the speciality. There were no slogans, no shouts, just the shuffle of feet, just the movement of feet was heard. The drip of rain and a low murmur from the watching crowd. Drip of rain, raindrops were falling, that was heard. And low murmur, low noise from the people who were watching this procession. That was the speciality of this movement. Slogan, easily remembered phrase is called slogan. Very short and catchy words are called slogans. Babu and Manju looked eagerly for Mohan. Babu and Manju were standing outside their house along the road, and when the procession was going on, they were searching for their elder brother Mohan. He was also a participant in the procession. Yes, there he was. Finally they identified. Dressed in white pajamas and a cream-colored shirt with another boy, both holding aloft a picture of the Mahatma. He was wearing white pajamas and a cream-colored shirt, and with another boy, there was another boy, both holding aloft, both holding up, high up, a picture of the Mahatma. You can see in the picture just given in your textbook. Their arms must have ached holding it up that way for so long, but their faces were expressionless, though they were sensing a lot of pain. By holding the picture of the Mahatma high above them, they did not bother about all these things. Their faces were expressionless. Now the leaders of the procession, they saw in excitement, had reached the barred gates. A police officer, he was the DSP, Mohan told them later, came up to them. There was some conversation between him and the students. So, who was the leader of the procession? Suman. Mohan's friend, classmate. Suman was the leader of the procession. He was seeing in excitement. They had reached the barred gates. Barred means, closed with iron strings, bars. Barred gate. There was a gate. The procession reached there. A police officer was standing near the gates in front of them. He was standing there and the procession reached very close to him. Who was he? He was the DSP. DSP refers to Deputy Superintendent of Police. He was standing there and there was some conversation between that policeman and police officer and the students. They spoke to each other. The students seemed to be arguing. It looked like that the students were arguing with the police officer. The rain had lessened now and the police officer took off his hat and ruffled his hair. Once he laughed, showing his teeth, but the students remained serious. One of them handed a piece of paper. So the students argued with them. By that time the rain had lessened, it became less, and the police officer took off his cap and ruffled his hair. He smoothly, set his hair as we do with our fingers. Once he laughed at the students showing his teeth. It was not a smile, it was a laugh, quite minority. But the students remained serious, they did not laugh. One of them handed over a piece of paper to this police officer. He took it out, glancing at it and nodded. He took out the paper from the envelope and glanced at it, glanced to have a quick look and nodded. What is to nod? Nod is a movement of your head from upwards to downwards. Yes, it's a signal of saying yes. So the students turned their backs on him and one of them shouted, Mahatma Gandhi ji ki jai. Once they handed over the envelope, once the inspector read it, the students turned back and one of them started shouting the slogans. Till now they were silent and again they started shouting slogans now on their return. What was that? Mahatma Gandhi ki jai. The others shouted back loudly and then they briskly marched back the way they had come. After giving the letters, they did not resort to any violence. They did not break any law. They were doing everything within the boundaries of the law. And briskly they marched. Brisk is fast, quick. Brisk walk, we say, quick walk. Marched back where they had come. They returned. Is that all? Manju asked in disappointment. Manju, the daughter, asked in disappointment, is that all? Is it over? I was expecting something else. What was that something else? She expected that the procession is going to be noisy, full of slogans, shouting, stone pelting, etc., etc. But to her disappointment, the procession was entirely different. It was a silent march following the principles of Gandhiji, peace and non-violence. So, is that all? Asked in disappointment. What else did you want? A dance at Rama? Babu asked scornfully. Babu angrily asked her, what did you expect? You expected them to dance, you expected them to sing. He asked. Nevertheless, he understood her feeling and asked Mohan the same question when he returned home. Babu also had the same question, why was it a silent march? But when their brother came back from the procession, when he came back home, they asked him the reason for it. Why did you go back so quietly? You should have done something. You should have brought crackers. You should have hit some policemen there. Why did you hold it silently? Were you scared of what the police would do? Were you afraid of policemen because they were holding lathi and all, and that's why you were silent? Mohan seemed immensely pleased with himself. Scared? Yes, scared. Not in the least. We had planned it this way. We knew they would stop us at the gate. We knew they expected us to protest and be violent. So he said, you think we were scared? Not at the least. Not at all. Not at all. 100% we were not at all scared. We had planned it that way. It was our plan to hold it silently. And we were expecting that we would be stopped at the barred gates. And it happened according to our expectations. We knew they expected us to protest and to be violent. Why did police come there? They expected students to break the law. And they wanted these students to arrest, to put them behind the bars, imprison them. That's why police were waiting for these students to make one mistake and then complete arrest. Oh yes, they wanted us to do that so that they could beat us up and haul us away to the jail. They wanted us to break the law so that they can beat us up, lathi charge, and haul us is to pull us and put us into jail. But we were not prepared to go to jail. Our plan was not to go to jail. We had some other plan in our mind, plan B. What was that? Not yet, not now. We want to go to jail, but not now. Why? It is because they had some other plan in their minds. If they break the law, they will be arrested and they won't be able to do anything. Their efforts stop there. So they did not want to get arrested now. That's why they said, not until we have given them much more trouble. We wanted to give them much more trouble. That's why we stayed quiet, he said. And so we decided we would give them no chance at all. What was the point then? Babu asked. While Manju listened earnestly, her chin cupped in her hands. So, what else? What was the point then? What did you want to do? What was your plan? Babu asked. Manju was listening to this conversation earnestly, very seriously, and with her chin cupped in her hands. This part, the mouth is called chin, face is called chin. Chin cupped in her hands, sitting like this. Sometimes during lessons also we sit like this and we listen to the teacher. So, it's like the declaration of a war. So our protest, our procession is like a declaration. We have declared a war. We have told them this is war for us and you are the enemy. What did they tell them in that letter? What did that letter contain? It was not a blank letter. The letter said that it is a declaration of war. War against whom? Against the British. And it is a war for us, it's a war for Indians because you have taken back our freedom. It is a war for independence. You are the enemy, British, you are the enemy. You don't start a war without first declaring your intentions, do you? Usually while declaring war, you are supposed to declare your intention, your aim, you have to declare why are you declaring war. That is the procedure while declaring war. There should be a purpose, there should be a reason behind waging war against your enemy. That is the rule. Unless you are Adolf Hitler, Amma, who had been quietly listening to them, said with a small smile. Their conversation was being heard by their mother, and she reacted. Unless you are Adolf Hitler, all of us have heard Hitler's name one or the other lesson. Adolf Hitler was one of the greatest dictators of Germany. He was responsible for the Second World War. We'll study about him in your lessons. Adolf Hitler. Unless you are Adolf Hitler, why is it Hitler's example given here? It is because Hitler used to attack his enemies without any intention, without any declaration. He used to launch a sudden attack. Suddenly, from unknown sources, aeroplane will come and it would drop bombs. It was an air attack. Would drop bombs and planes would disappear. Such a cruel person was Adolf Hitler. That's why mother says, unless you are Adolf Hitler, right, which we are not. You are right. Your example is right, mother, which we are not. We are not like him. We always declare our war first and then do it. So that's how it was. And what was that paper you gave the policeman? What was that in the paper? That was notice served on the collector as representative of His Majesty's government, asking him to quit India or face the consequences. That letter contained an ultimatum, a final warning to the British. Who was it given to? It was given to policeman, and he should hand it over to the collector. Collector refers to today's DC. Every district has DC. DC refers to Deputy Commissioner, not District Commissioner. In those days, he was called collector. So, it was a letter for the collector. He was the representative of the British government, His Majesty's government, the King's government, British King's government, asking him to quit India or else face the results, face the consequences. That was written in the letter. Suman and another boy turned up after they had finished their dinner that night. The boy staggered in with a large newspaper-covered parcel in his hands. That night, that procession, the night of that, Suman and another boy, his friend, whose friend, Mohan's friend, Suman and another boy, came to their house, came to Mohan's house after their dinner at night. The boy staggered in with a large newspaper-covered parcel. The boy walked, unsteadily. When you carry something heavy, you cannot walk steadily. He came in with a newspaper-covered parcel. There was a parcel in his hands. Got it? Mohan asked. Got it finally? His voice tense with excitement. Yes, sir. Lot of trouble. After a lot of trouble, we got this parcel. Keep it. That means they brought a parcel to Mohan's house, which was wrapped up with a newspaper. Here, let me help you. My room. Here, let me help you. Bring it to my room, Mohan said. Okay, Amma. Is it okay, Amma, if I keep it in my room? Mother said, no. I think puja room is better. Our puja room, prayer room is better because nobody goes there. It's a very small and dark room, so you can keep it there. A light there will look more normal. A light there will look more normal. Right, as usual, Amma. The puja room then, we'll keep it in puja room. The boy went away after a whispered conversation with Suman. His friends left the place after speaking to him, whispering refers to speaking in low voice. Then Suman, Amma and Mohan went into the small puja room. All of them went to the puja room. Babu and Manju stared curiously over their shoulders at the mysterious parcel, which turned out to be a cyclostyrene machine. Everybody was curious to see what it was. Parcel, not sweets, not any food. What was it? It was a mysterious parcel. Mysterious means very difficult to identify. Which turned out to be a cyclostyrene machine. Today we don't hear cyclostyrene machines, but in olden days, in order to photocopy, today we call it photocopy Xerox. That is the latest version, latest name, updated one. But in those to copy something that was called cyclostyling machine. That means they had secretly brought a cyclostyling machine to their house. Why was it brought at night? So that nobody would understand. Why was it brought so secretly? Even nowadays, do we bring computer printer, then Xerox machine, secretly? We take it openly. What is that? But in those days, British had laid restrictions on copying the speeches, especially copying and distributing the speeches of Mahatma Gandhi. See how cruel the British were. They did not want even Mahatma Gandhi's speeches to be distributed to others. But this work was planned to be done silently, secretly in Mohan's house. So Babu, Mohan said, as they settled down to work, sit out in the front room and keep watch. Babu said, Mohan said, told Babu to sit out in front room and keep watch. You stay outside the room, stand there and keep watch on somebody's arrival. Give us a warning if anyone seems to be coming to our house. If you see somebody entering our house, warn, signal us. Manju, go to bed. Or else, he went on noticing her crestfallen face. You sit here in the hall and pass on Babu's warning to us. First he told his sister Manju to go to bed. When he told her to go to bed, she showed a crestfallen face. Crestfallen refers to disappointed, because she did not want to sleep. She wanted to involve herself in the work. So Mohan understood this. So he asked her to sit in hall. So one will sit in hall, one in front of the room. If anybody comes, they will pass on the signal or they will pass on the message. That means they were doing something which was prohibited, which was restricted by the British. If British government comes to know about this, they will be imprisoned. It was such work. They were copying the speeches of pamphlets of Mahatma Gandhi ji in order to spread his idea, in order to create an awareness among other patriots. Because in those days there was no media like this. Radios were present, but hardly one or two. The paper was the only means of communication. So in this way, they were preparing for their way of struggling against the British. First procession, silent procession, without slogans. They did not break any laws because they had much more to do. They served an ultimatum to the British, and finally now at night they were doing something secretly using a cyclostyling machine. And here in that arrested patriot's house, where all the family members cooperated with one hand, these two brothers were asked to stand outside, sit outside, in order to keep an eye on anybody who would come. So I have completed up to 9th paragraph. More paragraphs will be taught in my next class. Thank you very much. Take very good care of yourself.